Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Stephen and Walter Live, S&W Live. And I see everybody's pouring in here today. I'm kind of surprised. I thought we bored you people with everything about Canada. Well, that gives us another opportunity to bore you further today. So there, that's working good. I've got that. So okay. So let us see who is here. Oh, it looks like Nightbot's going to work today. Didn't work yesterday on Sean's. So, anyways, okay, so let's see who's been popping in. We have a few that came in here very early. Russ was number 3. Russ, you're going to have to log on even earlier, but some of you guys were here when I turned this thing on half an hour before we started today. You were there. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. They love us. They really, really love us, to quote Sally Fields. So who's here? We have got Vicky is here, and Nina is here, and of course Russ. And many of you I saw just a few minutes ago on Russ's shenanigans. More about that later. Let's see here. Vicky's asking Nina how she's doing. I know today's chat will be wonderful. I love learning more about Canada. I studied about Canada way back when I was in school, but there's so much more to learn. Well, yeah, because we've had quite a few years go by then. You know, history keeps going. And Nina says, I'm enjoying the Canadian history series as well. It was not part of any of my history classes in school. Well, that's interesting, but I think we have figured that out. And Nina says, it's sad how much is not taught in schools now. I'm just glad I was able to study about Canada and that my children were given the same history. Yeah, really. If you don't know about history, it's, what's the saying? It's will repeat itself or whatever. Suzanne is here. Hello, Suzanne. Faith is here. Hello, Faith. Melissa is here. Tamala, Gloria, Andy's here. Julie is here. Mona is here, and Sue is here, and Marilyn, and Wild Rose Treasure is here. Yay! And Barb is here.
Candace?
Yeah, I think it jumped up on me. Here, let's see. Barb, Arta is here from sunny San Diego. Alice is here. Designing Jade, which is Joanna, she is here. Glenna Miller is here. Karen. And Dubrovka is here from Timmins. Pamela from Minnesota. And Candace, of course. And Heather from Elliott Lake. Whoa, you're way up there, Heather. And welcome. I don't think I've seen you on here before, so welcome if this is your first time in the chat. Jean E. is here. Gloria's liking the Canadian history sessions. And Russ says, why can't you teach us history instead of dwelling on the past? Oh, Russ, you're so funny. Oh, keep your day job, Russ. Barbara Yeldon is here from Wet England. Okay. And Kim from Nova Scotia is here. And Joanne G is here. Well, we've got everybody coming in. I'm sure there'll be a few more coming in as well. And we'll say hello to them when they get here. But let's jump into what we've been working on. So let me get up. Did show this the other day, but we're going to show it again because I like it. It's pretty. And I'll be talking about this in more detail on Idiot Quilter on Tuesday. But yep, the gnome bag from Sweet Pea Designs with the faux leather bottom on it. I think it turned out pretty nice, and it's, you'll notice there's a zipper on the front because that is a closure flap. And so, like I said, on Idiot Quilter, I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, why it's there and how I discovered it as well. It's just a nice little feature. And this, I'm going to be talking about this on the vlog. This is another one of those 3D printed models. This is the theater. You saw my Christmas one. You've seen the haunted house. Now this one. And I'm enjoying doing these and have them all on a timer. So they all light up at 4 o'clock and the afternoon. I've got hiccups. So the next one I want to do is really cool one. I haven't bought it yet, but it is a gypsy wagon. And there's actually the gypsy wagon. You can get that separately, or you can get it as part of a scene where it's got sort of a, it's a campground, a gypsy campground and kind of stuff. The detail in these models is incredible. And they print really well, especially with my new printer and with the Bamboo Lab printer. And he has thought of everything for putting them together. There is no struggling with them. They just go together like a dream. This guy's incredible. And he doesn't charge that much for them. I think the theater cost $20 Canadian, something like that. I mean, they're not expensive for the amount of detail and time that he's put into all of these. So yeah, I love it. And not yet. That one I don't want to show yet. So let's go back to us. Here we are. Walter's got something to show you.
Yeah, still not done.
He hasn't finished his bag yet, but he's got something.
I'm getting there.
So are you going to show it?
Yeah, okay. So I got the front and back panels done. So this is one of the panels. That one. And I chose to do my panels different on both sides. So, and that's
of course he did. Why is it different? How did you do that? What makes it look different?
They're a different order. Like this one's got this color and this one's got that color.
And would anybody notice that?
No, probably not.
No.
And so I just have to put the bottom on. So that's the bottom.
Out of that faux leather stuff.
Yeah, and I made my my handle straps out of the faux leather as well.
And I really like how you did these because look at how professional they look. You used a thinner thread, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I used a 100-weight thread to do that so that it's not as thick looking.
I hate him.
And so
he always does better bags than I do.
So
of course, you've seen what I've done, and then
it's a nice bag.
Then you hold back. Yeah,
it's a nice bag.
Oh
too.
yeah. I bet you say that to
so,
all the boys.
Anyway, so I just have to put it together, and hopefully I'll get it done in a couple of days.
It's only like, we're past the series now, with that, but now I've got to buy more of that faux leather because I've been using it a lot.
I still have 2 rolls. I have a roll of black and a roll of sort of reddy color stuff up there.
I really like working with it.
Yeah, actually, it's really nice.
It's nice and soft, and
it almost feels like leather. It's very nice and soft.
Ooh. The strap. So let's see. What are people saying here? Wet England. People like my bag. That's nice. Thank you. Love the gnome bag. And Vicky loves the theater. Let's see. And Walter, they like what you've done so far. Love the color of your bag. If anybody walked in here in the middle of this and didn't see what we were showing, this could be very kind of filthy here. I like your bag, Walter. And it's Mary's favorite color, Walter. Colleen is here. Hi, Colleen. She likes the new bag. Arda loves the colors in your bag, Walter. Yes, Joanne. He has a method to his madness. He likes to pretend, I didn't get it done. I was busy doing other things. No, what he waits is to see what it's going to look like when it's finished. And he comes to me when he did several times today. How did you put this on? Yeah, he doesn't want to make a mistake. Yeah, I take a chance. Everybody's loving your bag. And Wild Rose Treasure says, Stephen, you. Okay. Whatever. I think there's an incomplete. Oh, there is it. Your latest creation is so detailed. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Wild Rose. Mary says, they can't be compared. They're so different. True. They are. Jen's here. Hi, Jen. So anyways, that's what we've been up to. Yes, I have been working on the Barnstar sampler, and if you were on Russ's Shenanigans today, I was working on it. I have now finished 13 out of the 20 blocks, and of course there's multiple blocks within each one of those. So only 7 more to go through on this quilt from hell, and I'll be happy when it is done. So maybe on Wednesday, segue into Wednesday, on Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen, I'll get some more of it done. And yes, so Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen on Wednesday, 9 a.m. we open up the virtual doors at Zoom. Links in the show notes. All are welcome. Come and go as you please. You know the routine. Okay. Pop-up sew day. Yes, we're having one this coming Saturday, which is March the 29th. Virtual doors open up at 8 a.m. and we'll run till 5. Walter may make an appearance. He doesn't have anything on, but he'll probably find an excuse for why he shouldn't be here. You know, which is, what does that say about how you feel about your fans? Really, they want you here. They want to see you.
I seem to always find something else.
Yeah, you do. Crappy Tires always open. So yeah, and the link for it is in the show notes below. It'll also be in my vlog this coming week, and in Idiot Quilter as well, and in So Chatty next week as well. And I will be sending out that link to anybody who's on the mailing list as well. So yeah, so feel free to join us. And if you can't make this coming Saturday, I'm going to have another pop-up sew day in about 2 weeks after this. So yeah, on April the 12th, because that's the day Walter is going to trot off and go with his weird people to do his in-person sew day thing. So we'll have another pop-up sew day there too. So it's going to be 2 in matter of a 2-week period. And then we're getting very close to the spring retreat, the Idiot Quilter Spring 2025 retreat on April the 26th, Saturday, April 26th. Not next week, the week after. All the details will be coming out about that, like when you need to register if you want to come, how you do that. It's all absolutely free. The agenda, the whole bit for the day. So stay tuned for all that information. Now, as I said earlier, Russ had sewing shenanigans today as well, and many of you that are on here were there too. And we all had a good time and got lots of things done. And if you've never been to one of Russ's sewing shenanigans, why not? He usually has them on a Sunday, but you'll have to stay tuned to Russ's channel to find out when he plans his next one, because his are a little bit more of a pop-up than mine are. Mine started out as kind of pop-up, but now I'm giving you the idea that I was only going to give you like 24 hours notice. Well, that's changed. I'm giving you a lot more. So yeah, so we just have a good time at that. Walter was there, for those of you that are part of the fan club. Yep. Okay, what are people saying here? Melissa says, yay, I might get to make a pop-up. Yes, that would be nice, Melissa, to see you at the pop-up. Cindy says, I'm here just watching on the TV from my recliner. Oh, you've got the best life. Yeah, are you having a glass of wine or a beer? We're much better when you're drunk. So you might want to try that. Yeah, it's entertaining. Or high. Suit yourself. All right. So.
Can you know this how?
Never mind. So I did an interview in the past week, or posted the interview. That was with Bary Hughes of Bary Quilts. If you didn't see the interview yet, the link's in the show notes below. Go check out Bary's channel. He's a relatively new quilter, and it's kind of refreshing because, you know, for those of us that have been doing this for a while, we tend to forget the things, what it was like when we were a beginning quilter, although for me it never seems to end. I'm always learning, making mistakes, all kinds of fun things like that. But do check him out, give him some support. Very nice gentleman. And he has something called the button memory jar. People send him buttons with a little story about why the button is significant, and he keeps them in a jar, which is kind of different because I don't think I know of any other channel that does that. So that's Bary Quilts. And as I said, there's a link to the interview, and you will also find in that interview, there'll be a link to all his socials, including his YouTube channel. So you can go there. And just a reminder, a few of you have already gone and checked out the interview, and you've written very nice comments to Bary, which he probably will never see because you put them on my channel. If you're going to write a comment to Bary, you need to put it on his channel for him to see it. Okay? Because he won't see it if it's on mine. Okay. Oh, Cindy's having a Bloody Mary. Okay, Cindy. That's good too. Have a Canadian version. A Caesar. You're better. Okay, so, well, we had something exciting and unexpected that showed up yesterday on my text, when I was texting my brother. I was texting my brother to let him know that a close family friend, actually someone who's a close family friend to my mother, she had passed away last week. We're actually going to the funeral tomorrow. But my brother lives out in BC, so of course he won't be going to the funeral, but I thought he should know because these were people that we grew up with as kids. She was 89, had a good long life and everything. In fact, I think she was suffering from dementia. Anyways, I thought I'd let my brother know. Well, my brother said, okay, thanks that, and he sent me a picture. I'll show you the picture my brother sent to me. No, I know. I'm aware. Okay, this little bundle here, not the guy in the hat, that's Daddy. That is my oldest niece that lives out in British Columbia, Abbotsford. This is her husband, and holding their newborn child, who's 5 months old. I didn't even know my niece was expecting. And then suddenly my brother sends me this picture of, her name is Clara, 5-month-old Clara. I went, well, so to my brother, but my brother's name is Craig. I said, so Craig, I guess you're a grandfather. And that makes us great uncles. Again, we're already great uncles on Walter's side of the family. But this is the first one on my side of the family. And okay. And then my brother went, oh, yeah, I'm a bad communicator. You think? You think? So I'm going to make her a baby quilt and send it out to them when I get it done. But I have never made a baby quilt before because, you know, people my age group aren't generally having babies. And I don't care about their grandchildren. So, you know, I'm not sending somebody, I don't know your kid and I don't know your grandchildren. But anyway, so I've picked a design and I'll talk more about it on the Idiot Quilter, but it's a Tracy Perks. And you know Tracy Perks, she does the quilts. I made the Tomty back, not this past Christmas, the Christmas before. And that's the big gnome, but he's called the Tomty. And her stuff is all done with squares and half square triangles. And they're wonderful patterns. So I've had this one of a giraffe for quite a while, and it's been on my list to do. Now I have an excuse to do it. So, yeah, but I'll talk more about that on Idiot Quilter this week. But yeah, really. So I texted my sister. My sister and my brother, well, my sister more so than my brother, don't really communicate at all. So I said to her, guess what? You're a great aunt. Here's a picture of little Clara. And my sister didn't seem to be that impressed, but whatever.
A lot of hair.
Yeah, she got a lot of hair, and it's dark. My, of course, it might lighten up as she gets older, because I think Katie, when Katie was born, my
yeah,
niece,
but her
mother,
husband's got dark.
well, that's true. Yeah, but yeah, she might go blonde. My niece is blonde. But anyways, yeah, we've never met her husband. No, we weren't invited to the wedding. That's a story for another day. But not today. But anyway, so we've never met her at all. We have seen a picture, well, actually a wedding picture. That's it. And when we went out to BC to visit my brother back there, 2 years ago now? Mm-hmm. We saw my niece, but we didn't see her husband because that weekend they were having stag and a stagette for friends that they were part of the wedding party for. And the guys all went to Las Vegas for the weekend, so they weren't back yet. So my niece had just barely got back from whatever they were doing, spas and things, and I think in Vancouver or whatever. But anyways, yeah. When I saw this, I went, well, great. I said to my brother in the text, I said, well, I hope I get to see Clara in person before she goes to university. Yeah, subtle hint there. But anyways, yep. So that was good news. And let's go over here and go back. Where is it? Here it is. Oh, wait. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, she is a little cutie. She looks a lot like Katie did when she was that age. Yep, exactly, Jen. And I've got one, as I said. Well, you don't have to congratulate me, Colleen, because I had nothing to do with the birth. Wasn't there, didn't do it. Not me. But I always like that when I know people are being nice when they say that, but really, I had nothing to do with it.
It was kind of a surprise.
It was a surprise, complete
well,
surprise.
They got married quite a while ago, and
yeah, they've been married for.
They would never.
Yeah, really, we figured they were because they got married. Oh, geez, what's this? 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah,
they got married. Now they were relatively young when they got married, in their early 20s. They're now Katie. Is Katie 31 or 32 this year? She's 32. She'll be 32 in July. With it, and Kelton, I think, is the same age as she is. So yeah, but people are having kids a little bit, later in life, I guess. Yep. Candace says she's adorable, a head full of hair. Mary says your family sounds like my family, Walter.
Yeah. I was born with a head full of hair too.
Shame it had been filled with a brain. Ba-dum-bump. I'm here all week, people. Be sure to tip your waitress. Colleen says, well, get on to making that quilt then. Yes, I will. That's my next project. After
I
get
have to buy some cutesy fabric.
Yeah, well, no, for this one you don't really, because it's the done in block snap. Well, yeah, I'll have to see. I'll have to take a look and see what I can get. Anyways, yep. So that's the next project, I guess. Okay, speaking of other projects, we're getting things together for our first adventure in May when we go to Holland. And because we're going to be doing the train system, Walter, will you explain to them what your idea is?
I don't know. We usually travel with medium-sized suitcases. And my sister had gone on the train quite a few years ago, but my sister has a tendency to bring massive suitcases with her. And she said, well, they may or may not have, that was way back around 2008, I think. So,
dark ages.
And she said, well, some of the train stations don't always have elevators or stuff like that, right? And I don't know if that's still the case or not, but I thought, she said, you may have to be dragging your bags all the way up a bunch of stairs or whatever, right? So
gotta hate that.
I thought, I don't know if I want to be dragging a great big suitcase, even though we usually only take medium suitcases.
Yeah, we
filled them. And then I've been reading about the train systems over there, that they have luggage carriers at the end of each carrier, but they often have overhead storage in the seats, but they're usually designed for carry-on luggage, so not bigger bags. So I thought, I got into some research, so we decided to get backpacks, and we're traveling that way and trying to pack really light.
And Walter did research on backpacks. So here's what we've ended up with. So explain this backpack, the big one.
Well, it is regulation size for carry-on, and it is not a real fancy one. It's an old design, but it will maximize the amount of space that you can take in a backpack if you have to. So that's why I decided to get this one. We were looking at fancier ones and stuff like that, but a lot of them don't really have utilized space very well in them. So this is actually a Rick Steves bag. Yes, we ordered it from the US.
Yes, because we couldn't get it in Canada. So yeah,
But it was a reasonable price. I didn't want to spend $500 for a bag. This was a much more reasonable price, and even with the exchange rate and stuff.
and it's well built.
And it's well built, and I'm quite happy with what it is. Plus, if you get those really expensive bags that then people will want to thieve it just for the bag.
Yeah, expensive ones. But we also got another. So that's what we're going to use as our principal suitcases
Yeah.
with that. And it should fit in the overhead on the trains.
Right. It will fit overhead for the airline as well. But we'll likely check them because I don't like lugging them into the plane.
And it's got a feature where the straps on it all tucked down inside a pocket on the back of the bag. So, when you put it on a plane, you don't have your straps hanging over, if it's going through the baggage carrier and stuff like that and everything. And it's got a lot of pockets in it. It's kind of deceiving. I think it's going to hold like a fair amount, but we're going very
Minimalistic.
light, very minimalistic. Yeah. Walter's even throwing out his underwear on the way. He does this.
Yeah, I wear my old underwear, and then instead of taking it home with me, I discard it.
We can never go back to that hotel again after we've been there. Because Walter's got his underwear.
And I bought matching packing cubes for it that were recommended. So.
Well, they're designed to fit into this bag. I have a set of packing cubes that I've had for quite a while, and I use them in my suitcases because I like it. Keeps your suitcase all organized inside, and so when you open it up, things don't go exploding out all over the place. But I said, well, we should get these ones because they're designed to fit in this bag. My other ones probably would fit too, but we might as well, going this far, we might as well go the whole way. So on top of it, we also have this little bag. You see the teal bag there, and this is going to be for the stuff like it'll fit underneath our seat on the airplane. So like my iPad, our electronic devices, and we're cutting back on those too when we're going.
Yeah, we used to carry a bigger bag that was an over-the-shoulder bag, but I always only filled it half full of stuff, and it was kind of annoying. And I decided I wanted a smaller bag. Plus, I'd never be able to get my feet underneath the seat after I had the bag underneath there. And so I wanted a smaller bag that would hold my stuff on the plane and still be able to use it. And also, I can use this if I decide to use it traveling around as well. So.
Yeah. And also, it's got a lot of pockets, and it's got some security items on it. Like, explain.
Yeah, well, it has locking zippers, and it's got mesh interior, a steel mesh interior, so that if somebody tries to slash that, they can't get at your stuff.
And the shoulder straps have wires inside them too, so that you're in a crowded area and they try to sneak up behind you and slash the shoulder things and rip your bag off. So yeah, so we've got those. This will be a first. Here's the ironic part of all of this. A few months ago, we went to the Bay, which doesn't exist now, and bought new suitcases for these trips. Because our other ones are getting a little banged up. So we have these suitcases that we're probably not going to use.
Well, not this trip anyway.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then the little box you see sitting on top of that's a Walter, unbeknownst to me, but, a converter, the kind of thing for the plug system wherever we are. But I have one of those. I've had it for years, and it's in a box, and it has all these pieces that fit in the box. This is one piece, and they pop out and pop back in and secure it. So it's just a little cube. It's smaller than that box. And I thought when I saw that Walter got one, I says, oh, I want one too. So, and it's got USBs in it as well. So yeah, it's one way we're cutting back on the amount of electronics we take. Because I have a bag. It's not a huge bag, but it's crammed with every cable you can imagine and connection in there.
Yeah, I'm only going to take the bare minimum of cables. I mean, worst comes to worst, if we're somewhere, if we get over there and we find, oops, we've forgotten this cable, we can always
buy
go
one.
to an electronic store and buy one.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're really going minimalist here on this trip. So, okay, so back to us. And I think that's all the pictures that we have there. So, what are people saying? Um, oh, Kim says, will you embroider red maple leaf on them? Well, Kim, no, I won't be embroidering anything on them because I don't want to compromise the material. But I had said to Walter, do you think we should have something that indicates we're Canadian when we're going over there? And what were your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure. There's different schools of thought. You put something Canadian on there, and everybody knows you're Canadian. Everybody knows you're a traveler for sure.
Yeah, if you're a tourist.
I mean, I'm sure we're not. We are easy to spot that we're tourists.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not sure.
No, my first reaction was, yeah, we should have something because, okay, this sounds bad, but Americans are not popular right now over in Europe. So we don't want to be, there's no gentle way to put this. We don't want to be mistaken for Americans. Okay. So yeah, but then as Walter says, we also don't want to become targets like, oh, tourists. And that doesn't matter whether we're American or Canadian.
The problem in a lot of big European cities like Amsterdam and Paris and all the other places, there are huge amounts of pickpockets and crime and stuff like that. And it was always like that when we went, even years ago. But I think it's even worse now. So we just want to keep it
low key. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people might ask you, "Oh, are you American?" We'll say, "No, we're Canadian." So.
No, we're Canadian. Yeah. So we're not really sure what the climate is like over there right now, and especially we don't go until middle of May. So who knows what things are going to be like then. So anyways, and I see people are discussing different fabrics that are good for kids. That's good to know as well. Okay, so time for...
Well, is it better to use something like, what do you call it?
I don't know. I don't know what it called.
Brushed cotton flannel for a baby quilt?
Well, they'll suffocate better in flannel. So yeah, it might be if we're gonna. No, I don't think it matters.
Oh.
I don't think so. Well, okay. Yeah, this quilt won't be real soft. Maybe I'll double the batting in it because of the way it's made. I didn't think of that until just this moment. It's more of a wall hanging than a quilt that's made. And I'm thinking, like I discussed it with the people on Russ's Shenanigans today and showed them the pattern. And it's not a huge size, but it's a little bigger than the average baby quilt. But someone mentioned that, well, sometimes they like to put it down on the floor and put the baby on it so they can crawl around, kind of a thing. And I'm also thinking that maybe it would also serve, they could do that with it, but also serve as a decoration in her room or something, on the wall too. So something as she grows older, the design of it would go with a toddler, with a young girl.
I didn't realize you had a pattern already.
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
I've had the pattern for a while. It's been on my list to make it, and I just haven't got around to it. So now this gives me an excuse to make it. So yeah, Linda says a flannel backing is cuddly. I have never done a flannel backing, but I have done a flannel quilt. It was ugly. Yeah, on that. But yeah, I could do that. I could back it in something like, I'm not working with cuddle. I've heard horror stories about the cuddle on a long arm. I don't know. Some people have good luck with it.
Is it called cuddle or is it called something else?
No, it's called cuddle and minky.
Minky. Okay.
Minky's different from cuddle, I think.
Okay.
But I've heard minky for sure. I've heard horror stories about it. It's so fuzzy. It like clogs up your machine and stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll see when I get there. Judy says she likes an oversized baby quilt. Yeah, because the little bodies are easier to wrap up for burial. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I can see a lot of advantages to that. Oh, Mary says when you speak, people will know you're not American. Win-win. Maybe, but I don't know. We'll see how the Dutch go with it. The Dutch like Canadians, or they used to. I don't know. They keep sending us these bloody tulips because we liberated them during the Second World War.
Well, I'm sure I'll be welcome with my last name.
Well, yeah, but are you going to go around and go, "Hi, I'm a Vandergran. Hi, I'm a Vandergran"? You probably won't even speak Dutch to them.
Yeah, well, I've been watching like I can understand it pretty fluently, but I have not spoken it in years, so it doesn't come naturally to me.
And I don't speak Flem because that's what Dutch sounds like all the time on that. Fabrics, accessories. Oh, Linda says maybe just a small label instead of a big embroidery leaf. Well, that's an idea. Just a little subtle, like little maple leaf on something. I don't know. Maybe they don't give a shit, so who cares? I don't know.
Yeah, you can just get a Canada luggage tag, but everybody's got those.
Oh yeah. Marcia says, that's funny. We say we are Canadians. We're from Minnesota. Trying to sneak in under the wire, are ya? Yeah, Linda
quizzing
says,
you.
Yeah, Linda says Minky is a mess. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Hi Ingrid. And hi Darcy. I do only soft flannel on backs of baby or junior size quilts. I don't bind in flannel though. I do not enjoy working with Minky either. Okay, so good to know. These are all things good to know because I've never made a baby quilt before. Okay, so those are the light topics. Let's move a little bit more into serious one. Let's talk about the political minute, which might take 5. So you probably heard, if you were watching the news, that a delegation from Canada went down to negotiate and talk at the White House with I can't remember his name, but that Letnick asshole. Yeah, that's his name, asshole. Anyways, and our premier of our province, Doug Ford, he thinks he's going to be this big, going to go in and solve all the problems because he's going to talk to them reasonably in the whole bit. Yeah, he came home with his tail between his legs. Letnick basically insulted the whole delegation that went down. Well, he took the cue from the president, okay, who has been insulting us left and right anyways. But I thought, this is a stupid move, Doug Ford. You are not the person that should be sent in there to do any kind of negotiation. Plus, you are a premier of a province. You are not the prime minister of Canada. That job should be left to the federal government, not the provincial governments. But of course, right now, we don't have a federal government. Because, and I don't know, I haven't heard the news today.
Yes, I have.
Oh, so he's declared the election.
Yeah.
We have a new prime minister who's been replaced Trudeau, but not by election yet. Now he needs to be elected. He needs to be put into power. So he has declared that we're having an election. When are we having
April 28th.
April 28th, which in my mind, but I know why, I think that's too long a date. But they have to have time to,
Well, it has to be a minimum of 36 days.
Yeah. They have a regulation for that. And so for the next 36 days, all we're going to hear is all this. Well, we've been hearing it anyways for quite a while, where they're going to go at each other's throats. They never talk about the bloody issues. They just talk about how bad they do smear campaigns. And, well,
yeah,
you guys
know. You never used to be that way a long time ago. They would all put forth their own agendas and stuff. But now it's like they're all blaming everybody else for everything. So
yeah, so that's what we have 36 days to put up with on it. But right now we don't have a sitting government, which is not a good thing given the whole situation between our two countries that is happening right now. So Ford has taken it upon himself, thinking he can go down and negotiate. He can't. The only thing he can negotiate, as if they're going to listen to him, first of all, is for the province of Ontario. He cannot speak for the entire federal government. That has to be done by the federal government. So it didn't matter anyways. And I mean, the writing was on the wall that he wasn't going to get anywhere because you can't get anywhere. Trump is not someone you can negotiate with because he's an idiot. So he came home with his tail between his legs, but he's not admitting to that. He didn't really say what happened.
Yeah, he says, "Well, we had a very productive meeting."
Yeah, no, that's just Ford talk for I can't. I was told to F off. So yeah, that's where we stand now. So we don't know what's going to happen. Well, we have a month right now, a little over a month before we have a government in. Now we're hoping.
Yeah, it's not like the U.S. where our elections take forever.
Yeah, we are hoping that we have. Well, we're hoping because we're liberals. We're hoping for a liberal majority. The thing, because the alternative is for a conservative majority led by Pierre Poilievre, who is basically Trump in disguise. He's right up Trump's rear end. So kissing it away. And no, we don't want him. Now, according to the popular polls,
we personally do not want him.
We don't want him. But the liberals are becoming, with under Mark Carney, the new prime minister, are surging up in the polls. Now the polls, it's
if it was anything other than the time that it is now, it wouldn't be such a big deal.
Yeah.
But I feel that you need somebody that's strong to oppose the Republican Party.
Yeah. I mean, we need somebody who knows what they're doing. Now, Mark Carney comes from a financial background. He was the head of the Bank of Canada. At one point, he was the head of the Bank of England. At another point, this man knows about finances. And he seems to be, so far, I'm sort of impressed with what I hear come out of his mouth. But, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. We'll see how he is if he gets in. I mean, if we end up with a minority government, which means that the liberals don't have enough to carry the whole house, so they would depend, if they want to get any kind of legislation through, they have to depend on the other parties, some of the members of the other parties, to vote with them. And that would probably be the NDP, which is always middle ground. They are...
New Democratic Party is what you would consider far left.
Yeah.
And Liberal Party's
more towards the middle.
A little bit more towards the middle, but still a little bit left. And the Conservative Party is more right to far right.
Yeah, with it. So, yeah. And a minority government, in some ways, a minority government is not always bad, because there's definitely some checks and balances in there on anything. But right now, I don't think... What are you doing? You're picking thread off my leg. Jeez. Right now, we need a strong government, a strong voice in government to stand up, because if we don't, they'll sell us right down the tubes. And Poilievre will sell us right down the tubes with that. So, yeah, that's the state of Canada right now, which isn't adding to our situation in a positive way at all.
Hi, Jeannie.
Oh, is Jeannie here? Hi, Jeannie. Linda says, Carney, yeah, they vocalize the problems, but no solutions. If you're talking about the NDP, that's for sure. Or just the politicians. Yeah, like they're all saying, elbows up and whatnot. We're not going to become the 51st state. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to prevent this? This is what we need to know. And yeah, they always got a plan. They have a plan. Well, let us in on it, really. But they won't want to do that until they see who gets into power. It's politics. Hi, Charlotte. Okay. So anyways, that's the political minute. Let's get to education, because, a little education is a dangerous thing. And by what we're finding out about the American education system, which is being decimated right now with the dismantling of your federal education department and all that kind of stuff. Well, so the adage, a little education is a dangerous thing. The emphasis is on the word little, a little, because you're not getting a whole heck of a lot. So let's tune in here to the Canada Guide, and I have been reading this over, and there's some things in here that I think are incorrect, actually. I'm not sure who wrote this part of this Canada Guide, but I'm pretty sure they are not somebody who comes from as a teacher or from the education system in some parts. So, of course, our education system, we have lots of similarities to American education system, but we also have some differences. We have, of course, kindergarten to grade 12. So kids, it says here, for 13 years from the ages of 5 to 18, Canadian children are legally required to attend school from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Okay, there's a problem right on the first line. A child could be in grade 12, 18, but more likely to be 17. When Walter and I went to high school, we had grade 13, and I was 18 years old when I graduated. In fact, I was going on 19 because I turned 19 in the summer of that year when I graduated. So right now, the typical age of a kid coming out of high school is 17, not 18. So right off the bat, this gives me confidence in what they're writing here. Then they talk about the school year. Our school year usually runs from September to June. I know in certain states in the United States, you may run like school ends at the 1st of May or something like that and goes back in August. For us, unless it's a school that has what they call an altered school year, there's some schools that have experimented with that where they have the kids actually go 6 to 8 weeks to school and then they get a week off, and this is throughout the whole semester. So it's what they refer to as year-round schooling. It's really not. It just means that the summer holidays are broken into 2-week chunks throughout the year, and so they go in during the summer bit. But not all schools are that way. In fact, when I was teaching and they first came out with this idea to try, you had to have a certain percentage, I think 80% of the staff or 90% of the staff of your school say they wanted this kind of system. And if you didn't get that, then it wasn't considered. And the school I was at the time did not go for this.
Yeah, so basically though, most of the schools, the vast majority still follow the old.
Yeah, most of the schools follow this order. So we go from September to the end of June. Kids get July and August off for that. And then they talk here that there are 3 levels of schooling. Well, it depends on the province. It is leaning more towards this, which is kind of the American system to a point. Elementary school, middle school, and high school. It's the middle school part that is something that is relatively new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but
I mean, when I went to school, I went to elementary school that went to grade 6. Then I went to a separate school that was 7 and 8.
Yeah.
And then I went to high school that was 9 through 13 at the time.
Yeah.
And but a lot of, from what I've been reading, a lot of the schools now have elementary and middle stuck together as one building.
Yeah, as one building, they're not separate. When I went to grade 7 and 8, they were doing with an experiment at the time. They built a new school in my area, and it only accommodated grade 7s and grade 8s. So when I went into grade 7, I went to a brand new school, and they were experimenting with the open concept. And open concept was basically the school was designed so there was 4 rooms all attached together. They called it a pod, and there were no walls. So there would be 4 classes happening at the same time. Well, you can imagine the chaos. And the idea was that they would develop a curriculum where you would go and do English in one of these rooms, and then you did math over in this room or something. I forget how it worked. It didn't work. And in fact,
well, actually, the middle school that I went to operated like a high school.
Oh,
it was, we all had periods. We had a locker and we had a homeroom.
Well, we had periods too.
Yeah.
with it, and we had lockers as well.
And but we traveled between classes to other
Well, we did
locations.
too.
Yeah.
But the whole idea was that they wanted to do something where you combined subjects together in these huge rooms, and there'd be 4 teachers teaching and doing, and so you went to stations and did all this kind of stuff. In some ways, it was an idea that was a little ahead of its time because teachers hadn't been trained how to do this. And, the powers that be who really don't know what they're talking about thought this sounded like a good idea on paper. It wasn't. It was mayhem and chaos. So my years in grade 7 and 8 were completely horrible for a learning environment. They don't do this anymore. They learned, which is a good thing. But they've gone to this middle school idea, and in some cases, the middle schools will go from grade, well, I think it talks here. Middle school. They go from, where was it? I saw it in here. What grades? Often, okay, they talk about the early teen years, often from age 13 to 15. So they may go from grade 7 right up to grade 9 in a middle school, and high school starts at grade 10, but not in all cases. I'm really not sure what they're doing in our area now. I just know that any high school I taught in, we had grade 9 to grade 12. Well, at one point we had grade 9 to 13.
Yeah, well, I knew every time all the kids I knew went to a middle school that was 7 and 8 only.
Mm-hmm. That's what it was like when I was a kid too, in our area. Mm-hmm. In other areas, no, they didn't have that. It went from kindergarten to grade 8, and then after you graduated grade 8, you went to the high school, kind of a thing. So yeah, but I know the middle school concept is very popular in the United States, from what I've read. Whereas for us here, it depends on the area with it. Let's see, Joe, stop here for a second and say, Mary says our education system has been a mess for years. Kathleen says, ugh, open concept. My brother went to one of those schools. Within 2 years, they had to build walls. Yes, that was what was happening in the one that I went to as well. Yeah. In fact, Linda, in order to accommodate for not having walls, they built these bookcases on wheels to put up temporary barriers between the classrooms that were there. That still was good because they didn't go from floor to ceiling. And I do remember my mother came for parent day or something to see things, and in one of the classes there was these 3 kids, three boys. They were horrible kids. These 3 boys, they were always in trouble, were riding up and down on the portable bookcases, pulling each other around on them, and nobody seemed to be talking to them. And my mother says, this is how it is every day. And I said, pretty much. Welcome to my environment. So yeah. Anna says middle school, 7th and 8th grade, then high school 9 through 12 is what they have out there. Yeah. And I think that's what it is here too. I think it might be grade 6 to 8 in some cases. I don't think there's too many that do 7 to 9 as a middle school. I don't know. I guess it depends. So anyways, we have that. And then, of course, you get into high school. And they say high school marks the most demanding phase of Canadian public education, both educationally and socially, and spans the late teenage years. It concludes with a fancy graduation ceremony at the end of grade 12, when most students are 18 years old. Why are they saying this? Most students are not 18 years old in grade 12. They are 17. Like, who wrote this? Even once they're well into adulthood, a lot of Canadians look back at their high school years, particularly vivid memories. Oh, if a vivid memory.
It's probably somebody wrote it that came through the system and it's still grade 13.
Yeah. Yeah. But vivid memories. Oh, good God. I didn't hate high school, but I can't say if you gave me the choice to go back in time and go back through high school again, God, no.
I always thought the cool kids probably liked it the best. But, even when I've talked to people that were considered the cool kids, they said they had a terrible time in high school too. So,
well, it's a combination of the fact that kids are hormones are running rampant in them. They all want to be popular. They don't want to stand out as weird, and you have your cliques and the whole bit. I mean, basically, high school it can really kill a kid with that. And, coming back into the system as a teacher, too, I was very aware of this kind of stuff. I mean, and today now, when I started teaching, there was no such thing as the internet. And cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And in my last few years of teaching, all of that was contributing to a problem. Bullying, electronic bullying, all the other stuff that's there too. So yeah. It's funny. We had talked about this back in the spring. There was the 75th reunion of my high school. And we went. And my sister and her husband, they went with us because my sister went to the same high school too. And in fact, I was alumni as a teacher from that school because that was my first teaching job. I taught at my old high school. And we were sitting at a table, and these three people came over and sat down. And one of them I did recognize after all these years that I had taught. And the other one, she said, "You remember me?" I taught. Nope. I just tell them, I said, "No, I don't remember you at all." I said, "But don't be insulted by it. I either remember the really good students or I remember the really bad ones. If you're mediocre, that's okay with it." But this one young man, well, not young, this 40-something, maybe pushing 50, sat down at the table and he says, "Do you remember me?" And I went, "Oh, yeah." And I said his name. "Oh, yes, I remember you," because he was one of the bad ones. And he always had the hots for my sister. And my first year teaching at my old high school, my sister was in grade 14. She was doing a victory lap, kind of a thing. And this guy was a prick. And so I said to him, I says, "Oh, yeah, let's call him John. John, are you still a prick?" And he went, "Yeah, pretty much." Well, at least he knew what he was. Well, he'd had a wife, but that was over and whatnot. And I thought, okay, some things just happen. I used to tell the kids in school when they got worried about their reputation or what, I says, "Look, you don't want to peak too soon. You have a whole life ahead of you. Pace yourself. High school is not the place to peak. Wait till you go to university and beyond, okay? That's where you want to do it." But yeah. High school, I do have some bad memories of high school, but nothing that has altered my life. Nothing that's altered my life. Kind of a thing. Nervous tick.
I had some good memories of high school, but I had a lot of bad ones too. So
yeah. Now, then they talk here, and this one, okay. They say, let's see. In high school, classes are now much more specialized and specific. Rather than simply science, for example, students may take courses in physics, biology, or chemistry, offering much more emphasis on honing academic knowledge in one particular direction. Written assignments and tests become significantly longer and more detailed, and teachers stricter and more demanding. Well, yes, those things are all very true because teachers that teach at high school are specialists. In elementary school, teachers are expected to teach all the subjects. And, well, that's a tall order for any teacher because, jack of all trades, master of none kind of a thing there, but that's the way it works. But in high school, we're specialists. So don't put me in a math or a science class because I can't teach those subjects, but I can teach English. Like that, because that's what I was trained for. And that's what my degree is in. So yes, when you teach a certain subject here in Ontario, you need to have a degree in that subject in your principal teaching. They call it your teachable. You have to have two teachables. A principal one and then, for lack of a better term, a secondary one. My principal teaching is English because that's what my degree's in. My second teachable is drama. Actually, my second teachable could have been history, but I decided when I went to Teachers College not to take the training for a history teacher because they just opened up a new program at the time. Drama. And I was much more interested in that. I mean, I love history, but I didn't really want to teach it.
Yeah, you love drama.
Pick one. That's the one. Um, so yeah, so I was a drama teacher, and then later also I taught media as well, because the media fell under the English department. So yeah, but you put me in a math room or in a science classroom, oh God, no, there's no way I
Phys
could have done
ed,
that. What's that?
phys ed.
Oh God, no. Ooh, get out there and dribble your balls or something. I don't know. Just go away from me. I mean, I played anti-sports when I had to take phys ed in high school. You know, ball came near me, I went to the opposite end of the field. Don't throw it to me. Don't throw it to me. The only thing I was good at in phys ed was murder ball. And then I learned very quickly, you don't want to be good at murder ball. You want to get out right as soon as you possibly can, because if you're the last one there, there is a dozen balls all aimed for your head at once. Not a good thing with it. So, yeah. Um, but anyways, what they're talking about here though too, they say in order to successfully complete high school and thus their entire grade school education, students must pass provincial exams in several subjects. No! Unless they started that since I was a teacher. But no. Now, there was a day and an age back, well, even before we went to
Well,
high
maybe
school.
not in this province. You mean?
Yeah.
Like we don't know about other provinces.
No, because the education system is not a federal thing. Education is handled by each of the provinces, with the dismantling of the American Department of Education at the federal level. I guess it's going to fall on to all the states, and that could be a problem because, you know, some states will probably want to put in a more religious curriculum as part of what they're teaching. That may not be a good thing. And so, yeah, and you need some standards from a central area. I mean, our federal government does have some say in education, but not as much as the provinces. But it hasn't really been a problem for us, for Canadians in general. But provincial exams, not in Ontario. Now we do have some standardized testing that comes at I think at grade 3, grade 6, and grade 9. And it's supposed to be a literacy thing, and it's very controversial, but
Isn't
it's been
there a
going for
math
years.
one as well?
Oh, and there's a math one as well. But and yeah, I guess to a point, the kids do have to pass that in order to eventually graduate from high school. We do have requirements, certain subjects you have to take, because kids can pick their own courses, but there are guidelines for that.
You mean they can pick their own courses at
high school
level?
At high school level, but there are certain courses they are mandatory for graduation. English is one of them. I always enjoyed that. I'd get a grade 12 class, academic level. We had academic and applied. Then they changed those terms to, I think, university bound and college bound. We'll talk about the difference between those two in a moment. University bound, I love teaching grade 12 university bound English because they could not graduate from high school unless they got that credit. So the first day of class, I would write on the board my name. I put, you can call me Mr. Bland, or you can call me Sir, or you can call me God, because you need to get this credit or you're going nowhere. You aren't a high school graduate. So I can be your best
best friend.
Your best friend in this, or I can be your worst nightmare. You decide how that's going to work out. I'll jump through flaming hoops to help you get through this, but you give me trouble, you're going nowhere. Heard of the victory lap? Victory is a pun. It doesn't really mean what you think it means. More like a walk of shame. For sure. So, yeah. And they also had to have a math and that kind of stuff. You know, basically the basics in all of this. Now, let's just see what people are saying here. Yeah, they're talking about middle school. Junior high was 7 through to 9. High school 10 to 12. So it depends on the area. Middle school here is grade 6 to 8. And another one says middle school is 6 to 8. Iser says, good afternoon, everyone. Checking in, former U.S. educator, healthcare provider, and between careers sold cars because we don't get paid enough to afford our careers. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. All depends on the high school district. Anna says, middle school is the challenging stage in K to 12. And Iser says, interesting information. I always thought that the Canadian education system was far different from the U.S. Well, it isn't far different. But then it comes to the quality of education. We'll come to that. There is a difference there. And Anna says each state is already in charge of their own curriculum. There's no national curriculum. So why are they dismantling a Department of Education at the federal level? What's their job to do? Because that sounds very much what you're saying like ours. Because it's each province has a Department of Education, and they're the ones that, put in place the curriculum. Okay, so let us move down from this. And then they say here too, failing to get decent marks on provincial exams can make it quite difficult to get admitted into a good university, while failing to pass them all is a pretty intense social taboo that can severely limit one's ability to find decent work. With such high stakes, exam time is generally the most stressful period of a student's K to 12 education. That might have been true. There was a big onus for kids to go to get a university degree because that would get them better jobs. Or get them a job. That's not so true anymore. You can get a decent job coming right out of high school. I mean, they need people to be in apprentice programs now, like electricians and construction and things like that. We have a shortage of those kind of people. And now our government is trying to push making incentive for young people who aren't really maybe university bound,
or academically,
not academically in that, to go into those trades. Now they talk about special schools, and you might call these religious school, but first of all, our education system is usually free public system, free in the sense that we pay for it through our taxes, of course. But we don't have things like charter schools, which I'm not really clear on charter schools in the States. We do have private schools.
But they're not very...
There's not many of them.
Not many of them.
No. And yes, they are very, very expensive, and it's very questionable whether or not they're getting a better education. Basically, the parents have a lot of money, and they control what happens in those schools because...
You're paying for it.
You're paying for it. Yeah. I had a friend that went into the private system, and he said it was basically hell. You were kind of on call. You were expected as a teacher not just to teach what you were supposed to teach, but you had mandatory extracurriculars you had to be involved in. That would eat up some of your weekends, all kinds of things. Working late at night as well on all this kind of stuff. It was demanded of you, and they weren't getting any better pay than a teacher in the public system. But we also have separate schools, we call them. And these are for Catholics in Ontario. Not all provinces have them. In fact, this says Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario have these. The exception is the Catholic schools, which are publicly funded in the provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, a holdover from a time when Catholics were such a small, persecuted minority in Canada. It was considered important for the government to protect their right to educate their children in their faith. Yeah, I have some issues with that statement there. They're making it sound like the Catholics were persecuted here in Canada. They were not. If any persecuting was going on, it was the Catholic Church and the Catholics persecuting the native peoples. And
it was a political move by some parties in Ontario to Catholic schools were funded up to a certain grade when we grew
Well,
up.
they were funded up to grade 8, but then
And then they would have to then they operated as private schools from then.
And they had to be paid for. You had to pay for it if you wanted to send your kid to Catholic schools.
Right. But then one of our governments in Ontario decided that they would publicly fund Catholic schools.
For some reason. And that has caused a lot of issues over time with negotiations for teachers' contracts, salaries, funding of schools and whatnot. I am not a supporter of the Catholic school system. I believe we need one strong public system. And that comes from my experience of being a classroom teacher with that. But that's what we have here. And it has caused a lot of problems in Ontario.
And it runs into other problems in that other religions now feel they should be funded as well.
And we have a lot of religions in Ontario. We're a very multicultural province. And so we have the Jewish population have separate schools. The Muslim population has separate schools and this kind of thing. They send their kids to regular public school, but if they want their kids to learn about their culture, their religion, and that kind of thing, they have set up their own schools with their own money to educate their students, usually on weekends or after school, that kind of thing. But they constantly lobby the government for money. And of course, their argument is, well, the Catholics are getting that. Mm-hmm. So why shouldn't they do? And they have a very good argument with that. And that's another reason why I think, no, we shouldn't be funding any religious school, any background. It should be all a public system. If you want your child to have an education in your religion, your culture, then you provide them with that opportunity at your expense with it. There's a perfectly good public system out there that works fine. Well, for the most part, it has its flaws. So we have that, but that's only in 3 provinces. Now they do have Catholic secondary schools in other provinces, but if you want to send your children there, you have to pay for it. Darcy says a murder ball like the U.S. dodgeball sounds like different sizes. Yeah, dodgeball. Yeah, I had a sadistic high school gym teacher who called it murder ball, and some people took that literally with it. Anna says Department of Education is funding. Well, you see, ours are funded by the province. Each province does the funding for it as well. And they have a formula, which is very controversial. And I'm not going to get into that, but it's never enough. Put it that way. Linda, by today's standards, murder ball is like bowling because, it is. Iser says U.S. Department of Education determines funding for schools to help provide for students with special needs, aid schools in low-income areas, and provide tuition assistance loans for higher education. Yeah, that's all looked after by our provincial governments, not our federal. And Linda says vouchers. Oh, yeah, I've heard of voucher schools, too. We don't have those. No. Primarily, most of our kids go to public school, with the exception of what I just said about the Catholic separate school system. Okay, so now we have another type of schooling, though. And it says a uniquely Canadian twist on traditional public education is French immersion schooling, which is when a school in an English-speaking province teaches students entirely in French in order to help make them fluent in Canada's second official language. Now, so that is something that is kind of special. That is publicly funded. It's not a separate school, but you have to apply. If you want your children to be in French immersion, then you apply for it, they get accepted into it, and they're taught mostly in French to help make them fluent in it, which I don't think is a bad idea because the French education that we get in most of our schools is not good.
Yeah, it doesn't stick. So.
It doesn't stick. Like I took French all the way up. I we moved to this area when I was in grade 6, and that was where I was first exposed to someone coming in and teaching us French for like half an hour once a week. And I these people had been taking French since probably about grade 2, half an hour a week kind of a thing. And I was completely lost.
And most of us in the area of Canada that we live do not have, unless you force yourself to, you don't have a major ability to go into a French-speaking environment.
No, like we just don't. What we learned, you've heard me say this before. What I know about French, I learned on the side of a cereal box. The niacin, riboflavin,
Riz
rice, that kind of stuff. Because, well, for one, I don't have a head for languages, which is too bad because I wish I could. But when we were in high school, it was mandatory at the time I went to high school that I had to take it from grade 9 to grade 11. And the way they taught French in those days was not exciting.
Well, you know what was really weird in our school system anyway, I always thought it was weird, is that they would teach us proper French. It's Parisian
French, not Quebecois.
Not French Canadian French.
So, you could speak, if you were good at it, you could speak French in Quebec, but they knew that you were anglais because you were speaking Parisian French. And depending on the political climate at the time, that might not be a plus. So, yeah. So I took it all the way to grade 11. But the only way I got through it in grade 11 before the final exam, which was the oral, I I cheated. I never cheated in a class ever before, but I did in French. She would do every week, she would do the dictée, the vocabulary test. And you got a list of words that you needed to study, right? And then you had to do this thing. And it was written. So this other guy and myself, we sat near the window, right next to the windows to the classroom. And there was a big wide track on the inside of the window that the blinds came down in. You know, the big old fat blinds that they used to have. And so what we do is we would write on skinny little pieces of paper in alphabetical order all of the words that were possible for that test that week. And we would write 2 lists. I mean, when I think back on it now, it would have been easier just to memorize the damn list, but it didn't. Because we would put them in alphabetical order, but you never knew whether she was going to give you the English word and you had to use the French word, or if she gave you the French word and you had to use the English, she'd mix it up. So we put this long, skinny piece on one side, all the English words in alphabetical order with the French word beside it, and then all the French words in alphabetical order with the English word. And it will always look like we were just looking out the window while we were doing the test. And we did that a lot anyways in there. So I was a bad boy in that class. And this French teacher we had, she was hysterical. You could get her off top easy. She had to be 3,000 years old at the time. Madame Philippe, I remember that. And she was in the French resistance during the Second World War as a young girl. And we get her talking about being in that. And I'll never forget the one story she told. This is hilarious. She says, I'll remember a time I was getting on the train. I was going somewhere on assignment or whatever. And she says, so in those days, your underwear, they didn't have the elastic like they have today. I got up to go step onto the train, and the elastic let go in my underwear, and they dropped right down around my ankles. Well, I'm standing there in front of the conductor with my underwear around my ankles, and I just stepped out of them and picked them up and put them in my purse and carried on getting on the train like a lady would. And one of the girls at the back of the room turned around and says, well, that'll get you every time. As if she'd know. But I'll never forget that. That's how much I learned in French. What?
Okay, keep going.
So.
We're not learning much on education.
Well, I'm telling about this. You got to have a little humor here in this. And so on the last day of school, I was the first one. It was in alphabetical order to do the oral. I knew I was going to fail it, and I was going to fail the French class. She knew it too. And she said to me, she said, you're a good boy. You never give me any problems. I'll just pass you. We'll just let it go. Thank you, Madame Philip. And I was out of there before she could change her mind with it. So, yeah. So I don't know any French today. Anyways, maybe if I'd gone to French immersion school, but they didn't have them when we went. Now, then there's, it says here, a very small fraction of Canadian parents opt their children out of both public and private schools and educate themselves at home in a practice known as homeschooling. This is perfectly legal, though homeschool kids must still eventually pass government-mandated exams in order to have their education officially recognized. Homeschooling tends to be most popular with religious Canadians, rural families, or those with very conservative or libertarian political beliefs. I'm not going to get into it. I don't agree with homeschooling at all. I have seen the results of homeschooling. I am sure people would debate with me, and there's probably some of you out there that see nothing wrong with it, and that's fine. You do you. But I don't agree with it, so I'm doing me. Mostly what I find is not so much the quality of the kid education, but a lot of homeschoolers only teach their kids up to grade 8, then they send them to high school. And those kids, I have seen them struggle, not with the academics, they struggle with the socialization with it. Now, I know there's arguments about that and things you can say, and we're not going to get into it, but I do not agree. As a professional educator, I do not agree with homeschooling in our province.
Yeah, but we don't have a ton of homeschooling.
No, we don't have a lot of it.
No.
And usually it's kind of got a stigma to it as well. Here, because of what it said there, a lot of people anybody who goes into homeschooling oftentimes goes into homeschooling here because of a religious belief or something that they feel.
Yeah, extreme religious belief.
Yeah. See, we've gotten rid of, in the public school system, we do not do the Lord's Prayer. We do the national anthem. When we went to high school, there was the Lord's Prayer. And sometimes there was even a verse from the Bible read or something with that. Well, that was gotten rid of years ago, and rightly so. School is not the place for religious studies. We have, our country is very multicultural. We have many, many different religions. And of course, the religion that was happening when we went to school was the Christian Judeo. And we have so much more. So, you can't do it for one if you don't do them for them all. And so we'd be having prayers all day with that. So after you get out of high school, then you go to college or university. Now, I know the word college might be a little different in some parts of the United States from what we consider college. You are looking at two graduates here of post-secondary education. Walter is a college graduate. I am a university graduate. I am better than him.
I am.
Now, you go to community college if you want to learn something that, you might get a job from. You don't go to university to get a job. Okay? University is for the very academic minded. Or if you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an Indian chief, whatever, that kind of thing. Community college is more for learning a trade or getting into, tell them why you...
Yeah, well, okay, I went there to, at the time, learn how to program computers. That's what I did. Yeah. And that was the job that I did. I was a programmer or a developer, they call that now, software developer. And and other people that went there also, there were ones that became chartered accountants and things like that. So it was more of a practical education.
Yeah, a practical education. And I can use Walter's example of what he took to become a computer programmer. I could have taken computer sciences, as they called in those days, at university too. You would learn to program, but you learned different. You learned the theory behind computer languages. You learned the mathematics behind it.
We did that too.
Yeah,
in college.
Well, the difference, I guess, I'm trying to point out because I didn't take it, but
I think you get a more in-depth.
You get the theoretical, more theoretical, which won't necessarily get you a job with that. So that's what happens now. sometimes students will go to community college as a stepping stone to go on to university. They'll use it sort of like they'll take a 2-year course in something and maybe make a decision as to I would like to be more advanced in this. So
like you get a diploma when you get
Yeah.
out of a college, but if you go to university, then you can get
Degree.
A degree, yeah.
a degree. So there is that with it as well. My niece that lives out here, she went to university, but it wasn't really for her, although she was extremely smart. So she did go to community college, and did a 3-year course there, and then she was thinking, but that never materialized, of then going into advanced more into university, and they would give her credit for what she had taken at the community college level towards a degree as well. But that didn't happen for her. But some people do go through that as well. For me, I knew I had to go to university because I want to be a teacher. So a teacher has to, the professions, you have like a doctor, a lawyer, as I said, and a teacher, have got to get a degree. In fact, in the province of Ontario, and I think it's probably this way across all of Canada, you have to have 2 degrees to become a teacher. You do your undergrad degree. So I have a specialized honors degree in English, English literature. That did not teach me how to teach. Then after I got my 4-year degree there, my Bachelor of Arts in English, I went to Teachers College, which is still university, but they call it Teachers College. And I took a 1-year program to get a degree. I have a Bachelor of Education degree. And what happened at that is now I got taught the practical stuff about how you write curriculum, how you use a photocopier, or in those days, ditto machines and stuff like that. I learned how to drink during the middle of the week at Teachers College in those days. Now it's 2 years to get that here in Ontario. But in those years, and then you do your practicum too. So, 4 times out of that school year, you get shipped off to a high school, and that's where the real work was. Oh, doing student teaching.
Yeah, so you can get a degree like a bachelor's, a BA, and an MA or a PhD.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got a BA, and what do they call your diploma?
No, it was a diploma in computer science.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Did you frame it?
I only had a 2-year diploma. I could have gone for a 3-year diploma.
Oh, why didn't you?
Because I wanted to go out and work.
Oh, okay. One of those. Yeah. All right. Okay. So 4-year degree, first of all, then my 1-year. So I've got a Bachelor of Arts, I've got a Bachelor of Education. And then, as it says in here, of course, you can do, and it's the same in the States, right? You can get a master's degree, you can get a doctorate, which is a PhD. I have a master's degree in education, which means I did it part-time while I was teaching. I went to night school basically, and in the summer and that, and I got a master's degree in foundations of curriculum. So I have a degree in how to write curriculum, how to design programming, that kind of stuff. Programming as an educational programming. So yeah, I was older when I got that. I'd been teaching for a while. Also, as a teacher, there's something called a specialist. After you've taught for 2 years, or it used to be when I don't know if it's still the same. If you wanted to move up in the system, you needed to get your specialist, which meant you had to go to summer school, which was a lark with that. And so I got my specialists in English with that. And that opened up the door for me to get into taking principals papers, that kind of stuff, because you had to have that, and being a department head. So yeah, and by the way, I do have my principal's papers as well. So education for a teacher in this country goes on and on and on, because that doesn't even take into consideration all of the various courses I had to take to, keep up.
Well, I had the
my
same
license.
thing with my work.
Yeah, with yours
I had to do. I had hundreds of courses I had to take during my working career. So
it just goes on and on and on. Well, lifelong learner. Do you ever stop learning? If you do, you must be dead. You got to keep learning. So backing up here to what people have said. Anna says, we have immersion classes, half day in English, half day in language offered, Spanish, Chinese, French, or German. That's interesting. We don't have only immersion in French. We don't have it in any other language. Although in high schools, depending on what your teaching staff is, you can take Spanish and you can take, I don't know how much German anymore. At one time that was really popular.
It may be different out in BC. I don't know,
maybe.
because
they
have
take
a
Chinese.
lot. They have a high population of
that's true.
Asian immigrants. So
yeah. So that's a possibility. Obviously, they don't have French immersion in Quebec. They do have English immersion, but it's very difficult to get into it. Mm-hmm. Your parents have to be born in Quebec and had to have taken they had to be a part of an English school or something, mm-hmm. and that's why something like Quebec makes things always very difficult for everybody. Inez says she went to public school in New York City, got Yiddish, Spanish, and Brooklynese immersion without consent. Yeah. Deborah says, I am an American living in Quebec for 35 years. I will probably always have my accent. I think it is normal. I've always been self-conscious, but my friends have always been kind. And Linda says, some U.S. community colleges have matriculation agreements to universities. Students complete 2 years of basic course, then transfer to a university to complete upper division courses and earn a BA or BS. Bachelor of Science. Yeah.
That's a BSc, isn't it?
Anna says, what made you decide to be a teacher? Well, long story short, when I was in grade 13, I had to do a presentation about King Lear, about Shakespeare. And the teacher I had was an excellent teacher. And I think our presentation was supposed to be 20 minutes long. And I did it on the staging of King Lear, and I made a model stage, and I was really into this. And actually, my presentation went on for an hour. Don't say it. And everybody seemed to really like it and were glued to it. And I enjoyed doing that. And I thought, up to that point, I thought I'd be an accountant. Would have made more money. But I thought, I think I want to be a teacher. So I did and I figured an English teacher, because I felt that teaching English allowed me to be very creative, because there's so much you can do with English, as opposed to something that's more, you have to know this to get to this, you have to know this to get that. In English, you just have to know how to read and write. Well, probably not that anymore either. But yeah, when I went to university and I was finishing my BA, and I had one professor that I'd taken several courses, and I thought he was an excellent professor. You could always tell the professors at university who'd started out as teachers in high school, had teacher training, because they were the best lecturers. They knew what they were doing, and they were organized. So I went to see him when I did my final, they called it the comprehensive seminar or whatever. And he said, so what are your plans after graduation? And I said, well, I was thinking of going to teacher's college, but I'm thinking maybe I might stay and do a master's degree in English. He says, oh, no, you don't want to do that. Well, at first when he said that, I was kind of insulted. I thought, oh, do I suck that bad in this? He goes, no, he says, you're born to be a teacher. He says, you have natural talent as a teacher. And he says, I think you should do that. You can always go back and do a master's degree in English if you think that. He says, I think you'd be happier. And he was right. I was. So, yeah. So basically, that's how I became a teacher. Why I became an English teacher was that. There's a little bit more to the story, but I'm not going to. Walter will cut me off. Inez says, are there any magnet schools in Canada? Mostly academic vocational high schools, New York City. In Nevada, they started in elementary schools. I have no idea what. I don't know what a magnet school is. Yeah. Now, we used to have vocational schools at the high school level. They were funded, and those were for kids who really, academics, forget it. But they could go to the vocational schools and actually learn a trade. They could take classes in woodworking, carpentry, hairdressing, all kinds of things like that. and the idea was that when they graduated from high school, they could get a job and this would be more to their liking. But our provincial government, I don't know if there's vocational schools in other provinces anymore, but in our province, we don't have them.
Well, I know some of the colleges now offer more vocational type things, like, you know, how your nephew learned electrical stuff. And I think there's ones that do carpentry and things like that as well. So
yeah. So, and it's a real shame because I saw kids in my classes that there was no way they were going to graduate high school. They weren't interested in the academic stuff. You know, if they'd had an opportunity to go into something that would be more to their liking, more to their, you know, what would be inspiring to them, they would have been very successful. Whereas they usually dropped out from high school, and a lot of them just drift, you know. But that was in the wisdom of our provincial government there. Because they want to save money. And yeah, that is really a shame. Okay. So Dubrovka says I had grades 1 to 6 in Croatian. Spelling and math was my priority. School was Monday to Saturday when I came to Canada. In grade 9, math was what I had in grade 6. Okay. Yeah, I know there were certain countries, especially, you know, in Europe and that, where education standards are that they are much more stringent than they are here in our country or in North America in general. Okay, Vicky, enjoy your dinner. So anyways, that's basically how our education system
now
works.
How's that work for people getting paid for teaching?
Oh, okay. So salaries. Teachers here in our province do pretty good. Pay is not bad. Now, okay, I'll tell you, when I finished teaching in my last year, I was almost making $100,000 a year. I was making $99,300 gross. That was before taxes and everything. After taxes and that, it's 2 cents with it. But I was also, because at each level, you are paid according to the level. So I had an honors BA in English. So that put me at one level when I started. Then I got my specialist, as I was telling you, in the summer. That increased my pay for that. When I got my master's degree, I got a little bit more for that. When I became a department head, I got a little bit more for that. So yeah, there are levels that happen with that. The more education, basically, the more money you make. But you're still not making, now I think now an average teacher, I'm not sure what a starting teacher was making, but if it took me 31 years to get up to 99,000, okay, and I started at, I think, just under 23,000 a year before taxes and everything. I would say a starting teacher now, I haven't looked into it, I should, is probably...
how many years ago was that?
Well, 31, well, more than 31 now. Like,
no, not, you haven't been retired for 31 years.
No, I taught for 31.
Yeah, I know, but like,
you've
been out of the system
for another 13.
Yeah, okay.
So
you were making 99,000 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I said that took me 31 years to get to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, and I started at just under 23,000 in 1981. I would say that a starting teacher here in Ontario now is probably starting at 65,000, maybe more. I don't know. And I would say if someone was at the spot I was at when I retired now, they're probably making 120, 125,000 a year before taxes. Okay. So it's not bad, but you know, a teacher should be paid well. You want to have well-paid teachers. You want to attract people to the profession. If you're not going to pay a teacher that, you might as well have babysitters. And that's what, unfortunately, is happening in the education systems in both of our countries to a certain degree. So, yeah. So, anyways, just finishing up here. We're going way over time. Okay, so that's how the education system here in Canada works, especially Ontario, because that's what I'm most familiar with, of course. And I think there's definitely similarities between the two. But I think the bottom line right now with what's happening in the United States with the getting rid of the Department of Education at the federal level. And as Inez says, that they're the ones that look after the funding. Well, when you start removing levels of funding or whatever, there's going to be, kids are going to suffer. Schools now, they're cutting programs in the arts, music programs, things like that, especially in the States, from what I've heard on the news and other sources. Here in Canada, those are under attack as well. So, you get what you pay for. And education needs money. It needs that. It also needs some controls. You can't just allow, anybody to write curriculum because they have an agenda.
Like consistency.
Yeah, consistency with it as well. So, yeah. So that's how things work here in our province. So, just finishing up, Mary says, I agree, teachers deserve more. Pay is terrible. I worked as a teacher's aide, and they deserve lots more, especially in this day and age. Yes, and also you need money to have special programs to support special needs students, because in our province, that's not a separate school or something like that. They are integrated into the mainstream. And not all teachers have training in that. So they need to have support workers. They need to have early childhood educators in there. They need to have special ed teachers, as we call them, and stuff like that. And the government here is underfunding them for that. And that's going to cause problems in our society. So, anyways, next week, we're going to talk about living the Canadian life. What's different about the way we live as opposed to the way Americans live? And Americans seem to think we're the same, that our lifestyles are pretty much the same. They're interchangeable. There's similarities, but there are also a lot of differences. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. So tune in for that. So I hope everybody has a good week. Ezra says, magnet schools provide a vocational education, a large variety of careers, nursing, construction. Okay, well, that's what we would have called vocational school here. Teachers work night and day and use their own money. That's wrong. You're damn right, Mary. That is wrong. I know. First-hand experience with all of that. Okay, thanks, guys, for listening to this week's FYI Canada. And we'll see you next week, hopefully. And all the other videos. And don't forget, Pop-Up Sew Day this coming Saturday. Doors open at 8. Be there, be square. Okay, see you guys next week. Have a good week. Bye, everybody.